Hey everyone, and welcome to my garden. First of all, a huge thanks to Linda for inviting me onto the channel. It really is so lovely to be able to introduce you not only to myself, but more importantly, my garden here in Ireland. It's just under an acre and it's hidden away in the Irish countryside. Ireland is a country that truly has a bit of everything, from stunning coastline, the open expanse of mountains, the shelter of woodlands, and beautiful open rolling countryside. When it comes to our weather, our hardiness zone is very roughly zone 8B to 9A, and our last frost date can be as late as mid-May. Saying that, Ireland is blessed with a lovely warmed climate, helped by the Gulf Stream, so we have a temperate maritime climate, cool summers and mild but wet and windy, and I mean wet and windy winters. That makes growing a huge variety of plants really easy. I've been making episodes for my channel Niall Gardens for about 2 years now, so I thought that rather than just walking you around, I'll show you how this place evolves through the year, how it's both ornamental and productive, and some of the big changes that I've been making since I took this garden on. So let's kick off here in the front garden, and what makes this area of my garden really special is the beautiful selection of mature trees here. At this time of year, they're just gorgeous. Everything is green and bright and lush, but as the summer moves through, everything dulls down but looks really full. Then as you go into autumn, this whole garden is just an absolute riot of colour, from golds, from the silver birch, to bright purples over at the maples, and off to one side our ornamental crabapple covered in bright yellow fruit, and then the leaves turn bright yellow before they fall. Then through the winter, all of those bare stems look absolutely fantastic, and that brings us back to now in spring. But to show you specifically some of the beautiful things we have here, let's kick off by looking at this, the wedding cake tree, or Cornus controversa variegata. At this time of year, you can see that the tone of green is really quite unusual, and that's because it is so variegated and it has so much white in each leaf that it looks really bright. It's almost like a mint green colour. Then it's got tiny little clusters of white flowers, and once it sheds all of its leaves, even in the winter, it's full of interest. The branches are, well, really a mixture of grey, where it's the main trunk and the branches, and then the little stems that hold the leaves are bright maroon red, which is beautiful to look at during the winter. Staying on winter interest though, behind it are our 3 multi-stem silver birches, which, as much as I love at this time of year, I love even more in the winter when you can really appreciate that bright white bark. Over in the other corner though, we have 3 really massive maples. There's one really dark, almost black maple, and then either side of it 2 variegated maples. Now, they are lovely and they fill that corner of the garden, but we really do have to talk about what is the star of the show, or at least competing against the wedding cake tree, and it's this. It's called Golden Hornet, and it is an ornamental crabapple. A few weeks ago, this was absolutely covered in the most beautiful white and pale pink blossom. Now it's covered in leaves, but the real show comes in the autumn, because it's going to be covered, and I mean covered, in bright yellow fruits, which when they drop, the leaves drop, and then you're left with the lovely form. But there's something else at the front of the house that I want to show you. It's our secret garden, and it's over that way. We've come across from the front garden, and hidden behind hedges and trees is this, our secret garden, and you can certainly see why it's called a secret garden. What's special about this area is that it's got some really beautiful specimen plants. On one side, tucked down here, we have a Magnolia stellata, which for most of the year actually looks quite plain, but early on in the spring, those beautiful star-like white flowers just look so special and radiant in that late winter, early spring light. Coming round to this side though, we have a beautiful acer, or a Japanese maple. You can see the colour at this time of year is that really deep maroon. But once we get to autumn and the leaves are about to fall, this thing goes on fire, and in a really good way. The colour just really lifts into this bright, bright red colour that looks as though the tree is illuminated from inside. We have a huge Mahonia, which has all year round interest, spiky foliage, bright acid yellow flowers, and lovely dark bluey blackberries. And then finally, off in the corner here, we have a really pretty special specimen tree that I must confess I wasn't aware of until we moved here, and it's a Robinia pseudoacacia. During the winter, once all the leaves fall off, you can really see its totally contorted, twisted form, all these little angular branches that are just fascinating. But that's pretty much it for the secret garden and for the front of the house. Let's go round to the back because I've got more to show you there. So we've come through now to the back garden, and there is still so much more to show you. As you can see, we have the most majestic cedar tree on the western side of our garden. Tucked underneath that is our wildlife pond. This pond was already in place when we took on the house a couple of years ago, but I've been working really hard to make it a nature pond, somewhere that's going to promote wildlife and biodiversity, not only in the water itself, but also in the planting of the rockery around the edges. To that end, I've planted up the rockery with loads of natural, wild-looking plants, things like ferns of all different types, including aspleniums, those lovely little ferns that you see growing out of the cracks in rocks or in amongst walls. There's foxgloves, there's geraniums, and all sorts of other lovely plants that give lots of interest when it comes to leaf shape and texture, as well as flowers. I'm really happy with how this area is coming on. It is a work in progress, but it is hiving with wildlife, whether it's bugs and beetles or whether it's frogs and of course tadpoles. I'm delighted with how it's getting on. But then behind it, we have our orchard, and I want to show you that in a little bit more detail, so let's go and have a look. Welcome to the orchard, and this truly is one of my favourite spots in the garden. As you can see, we've got 7 large old apple trees that, yes, are a bit overgrown. They're a bit old and they're a bit congested, but actually that congested form is really beautiful in the winter when the leaves are off the trees and the trees themselves are bare. Then the trees have absolutely beautiful blossom that passed just about 3 weeks ago, and following that, they come into leaf and they create the most beautiful shaded area to sit in and enjoy during the summer. But it's not only the trees that provide interest here, it's all of the planting underneath. It is a little bit wild and a little bit unkempt, and that's exactly the way I want it. What I want is an area that does have that slightly wild feel, but that most importantly helps promote biodiversity and help wildlife. This is a bit of a powerhouse of the garden in that it provides interest pretty much all the way through the year. Come the very start of January, lots of drifts of snowdrops pop up with those little white flowers singing out. And believe me, our winters in Ireland can be a bit grey, dull and dismal. So it's very nice and very welcome to look out on those lovely little snowdrops. But from then on, it is spring bulbs, spring bulbs, spring bulbs, yellows and whites of daffodils, purples of tulips that I've planted, and it continues on with bluebells, both white ones and blue bluebells, celandines. Then we've got all sorts of other plants. We've got anemones planted, Fritillaria meleagris, and of course, lovely bright clumps of blue forget-me-nots. All of this colour is happening one after another, layering over one another, providing loads of interest through the spring. But now we are on to foxgloves and aquilegia. I've planted these all the way underneath all of the apple trees here to give that really lovely woodland feel. And seeing all of these spires of colour, whether it's pinks or purples or whites, I think just really lifts this area and again helps to contribute to biodiversity. But we're not done yet. Let's head across this way because I want to show you my veg garden. Welcome to to my raised bed potager vegetable garden. A really pretty massive project that I've taken on since I took on the whole garden, but somewhere that I'm probably most proud of. This area was originally just a blank canvas, a clear piece of grass about 7 meters wide by about 20 meters long. It's taken a huge amount of work. There are 14 raised beds, each of them either 8 by 4 feet, or L-shaped 8 by 4 feet. So it's taken about 64 scaffolding boards that needed to be cut down to size and about 12 tons of topsoil that needed wheelbarrowed in by hand to make all of these beds a reality. But now that it's done, to say I'm delighted, well, a bit like the workload would be an understatement. This has really surpassed my expectations even after only 1 year. Having a space where I can grow both productive and ornamental plants all year round in perfect growing conditions is really something special. And even at this time of year, where really I'm still only just getting up to speed with this year's crops, there are lots of lovely things going on. It really is a place that's pretty special to me. I spend a lot of time sitting here and enjoying. But that has pretty much brought us to the end of the garden tour. There's plenty more hidden corners to my garden that I show over on my channel, but these really, I think, are the highlights. I really do hope that you've enjoyed getting to see what I think is the best of my garden here in Ireland. I get a lot of inspiration from seeing gardens that are located in different parts of the world, so I hope that you get the same from this. Linda, thank you so much again for having me on your channel and letting me share this place with you. Thanks everyone.